Guys, I've realized since I've started this channel about 3 months ago, I've done a lot of dedicated videos to various players, whether it be highlighting them in a positive light, a negative light, their future potential, etc. But I noticed that although I've talked about this player multiple times and shared my thoughts on said player, I haven't actually addressed him specifically. And with all the comments I've been seeing from you guys and how we need to trade him ASAP, that he's soft, he's injury prone, shooting is his only skill, all of that. And if you haven't guessed it by now, that guy is Lauri Markkanen. And I think the most common question or sentiment really is whether it makes sense to trade Lauri now, if it is unlikely that we will retain him in restricted free agency. And that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. So guys, as I'm sure some of you know, the Bulls had the ability to offer Lauri Markkanen an extension on his rookie scale contract before having him become a restricted free agent in this upcoming offseason, and the deadline for an extension to be reached was on December 21st, and well, the Bulls and Lauri's agent did not reach an agreement on an extension. In fact, they were pretty far apart in terms of reaching an agreement. Now, I said in one of my videos about a week before the deadline that I did not think the Bulls and Markkanen were actually going to be able to come to terms, and that it was very unlikely because it was obvious to me that Arturas wanted to keep his options open for the upcoming free agency market in 2021, which at the time was supposed to be a star-studded free agency class before most of the big names re-signed extensions with their respective teams. In addition to that, it was assumed that Arturas was really going to use this season as an evaluation year, which is still the case. And since Lauri did not have a great season last year under Jim Boylen, and of course has had his issues with staying healthy, it was doubtful that the front office was looking to sign him for any type of large contract, that Lauri's agent was probably looking to secure him, which it's been rumored to be that it was around the range of $20 million or so. And rather, Arturas, treating it as a prove-it year for Markkanen to show his value, and that last season was just an isolated incident under bad coaching and a bad system that was not really designed for his strengths at all. So when the deadline passed and an extension wasn't reached, it was really up to Lauri then to prove his worth, that the contract he's looking for, he is worth that amount. And to be honest, I was kind of excited for that because it meant that Lauri was going to be aggressive and play his best basketball working hard for a contract. I mean, typically we see that from players across the league. They play their best basketball when they're in a contract year. It's also part of the reason why I thought Otto Porter would actually have a good season this year playing in a contract year, but we all know how that's turned out so far. He's barely been able to stay on the court. Now with Lauri Markkanen, the way that he started off this season, he started it really strong, shooting very well, improving areas of his game that we didn't see last year, being more aggressive in the paint, slashing to the basket, and he was even playing better defense. Not the best defense, but better for him, from what we're used to seeing anyway. Then Markkanen unfortunately had to be held out of the lineup due to the NBA health and safety protocol, when she was potentially exposed to Chandler Hutchinson, who had tested positive for COVID. This was back when the Bulls had faced the Wizards at the end of December. Markkanen missed close to 2 weeks as a result of that. He came back really strong, actually, arguably better than he had initially started off the season. And I was saying on the channel, the Bulls probably made a mistake in not reaching a deal on an extension with him because, now he's likely going to command more money and they would have been able to get him at a much cheaper rate. And now you're looking at teams that are probably going to, maybe offer him larger deals. I mean, if you look at Lauri's numbers, especially when it comes to his overall efficiency rating compared to previous seasons, he's shooting the best he's ever had from the field and three, averaging the most points per game of his career at 19.1. Granted, this has only been through 14 games so far, since Markkanen has only played in 14 of the Bulls' total 32 games played thus far. That's less than half. Now, of course, Markkanen injured himself by spraining his shoulder against the Magic. It was honestly, it seemed like a minor encounter in terms of the contact he made with that shoulder injury. And I was really shocked that he actually was impacted on that play so much. He initially went out and then he tried to come back the following game, but didn't play well and then had to sit out even further. And then it was announced on February 8th that he would be sitting out, or he was announced to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. And here we are on February 28th with no updates on his status other than Billy Donovan saying it's likely he will not return before the All-Star break. So the earliest that we'll likely see Lauri Markkanen is March 11th if he returns right after the break in the Bulls' first game. Now, if you've been watching my past videos, I've defended Lauri Markkanen for the most part. I actually think he has the potential to become a great number 2 option, potentially even an all-star in a few seasons. And that's because 7-foot big men who can stretch the floor, shoot from the outside, but also have the ability to play inside. Although, you know, his inside game, it could be better, especially when it comes to his rebounding, which we know that he has the ability to do based on his first 2 seasons. But that type of skill is very coveted in this league. I think it kind of just all goes back to, can he stay healthy? I mean, the most games he's played in a season was 68 of 82 available, which was in his rookie year. And despite all of the injuries, I've kind of continued to defend him through the years. The guy has all his injuries have been kind of minor freak accidents. At the same time, though, more often than not, when you tend to see a player having these minor freak injuries at a young age, same goes for Wendell Carter Jr., by the way, it generally doesn't bode well for their long-term health and poses risks of major injuries at a later age. So with all of that being said, what do the Bulls do? Do they try to find a trade for Lauri Markkanen, although his value is probably at its lowest that it's been all season, given he's been injured and teams haven't seen him play much recently? Do they wait until he comes back, which hopefully will be right after the All-Star break, as I mentioned, which would allow them enough time to potentially raise interest in raising his trade value before the deadline, which is on March 25th? Or do they just play out this season, see how he performs and fits with the overall roster, and see what he fetches on the open market and free agency, and they might have to match whatever teams are willing to pay for him? Similar to what the Bulls did with Zach LaVine, and him becoming a restricted free agent, getting an offer from the Kings, and the Bulls matched shortly thereafter to retain him. Now, if you ask me, I still think the best course of action is to hold on to Lauri for this season. See how he performs after coming back from this injury. And because the Bulls will have a ton of cap space going into the offseason, and the free agency market is more or less dried up, you have the flexibility to match an offer and extend him an offer that is within reason for his value based on his recent performance, but also factoring in his injury concerns. And if someone is offering him too much money, I honestly think anything more than $20 million a year is too much for Lauri at this point, unless he starts balling out after coming back from his injury and contributes to more wins for the Bulls. But anything more than that, I mean, as unfortunate as it is, then yeah, you might lose him for nothing, and sometimes that's just how the business of the NBA works. Because realistically speaking, the Bulls are not going to be able to get that much in return for trading Lauri Markkanen. Not while he's currently injured. And the trade deadline is just weeks away, so there's not a ton of time. The last thing you want to do is make a reactionary snap decision and say, well, we're winning without Lauri. He was playing well before he got injured, but he keeps getting injured. You trade for a decent piece or pieces to complement the roster. But what if Lauri returns from injuries after you've traded him, and plays extremely well because he was playing well when he was healthy at the beginning of the season, and, you know, later on down the road, he goes on to become an all-star stretch 4, something that is huge to have on your roster in today's NBA. Now, I know you're probably saying, well, so what if that ends up happening? You might as well get something for him in a trade rather than losing him for nothing in free agency, even if he goes on to have himself a nice career, if some team makes him a ridiculous offer in free agency. And yes, that is fair, but I honestly don't think Lauri is going to get that much in terms of high offers from other teams based on, well, one, the fact that he is injured right now, so there will be uncertainty and concerns around, his overall health from other teams. And really that should apply to the Bulls as well, don't get me wrong. 2, I'm also not sure how quickly Lauri is going to be able to ramp up and get back to form after he comes back from his current injury. So I do think there likely will be some hesitancy around the league in wanting to make him a large offer. So it is possible the Bulls might be able to keep him for a decent amount, somewhere in the range of, say, 15 to 20 million a year. And I do think that that's a risk worth taking on Lauri, despite his injury concerns, because again, we have seen the potential for Markkanen. I mean, in his rookie season, before LaVine came back from his ACL injury, he was arguably the Bulls' best player as a rookie. He didn't have a great year last season under Jim Boylan, but under a new coach a new system, he has performed very well, playing much more consistently with more confidence. And guys, he's only 23. I know I say this a lot about young players, but I always think back to guys like Steph Curry, who a lot of Warriors fans were wanting to give up on him early in his career and were preferring to keep Monta Ellis on the roster because Curry was small, he was injury prone at the time, initially wasn't helping the Warriors win. And I'm not saying Markkanen is Steph Curry, guys, before you destroy me in the comments. I'm just using it as a comparison of players who were once about to be given up on before they had really started breaking out into their potential. And then, of course, we know Steph Curry became a superstar. Now, I don't know if Markkanen will ever become a superstar per se, but I do think, he could be a huge contributing piece to this team in the near future as the roster grows and develops further. And I'm not a fan of just writing him off because he's had some freak injuries. The potential is there. He has a skill that is very valued in this league as a stretch four who shoots well from the outside. And if he can work on the weaknesses of his game, like his defense, his post-up game, his rebounding, particularly on the offensive end. And I know a lot of people knock on Lauri as being a player who can't really create his own shot, and that being one of his weaknesses, which is true. He's not the best at creating his own shot, but I'm not as concerned about that because there have been a lot of star players in this league who were great number 2 or number 3 options who weren't known for creating their own shots, but they were critical to the success of their team. Thinking of guys like Klay Thompson or Ray Allen. So it would be nice if Lauri evolved his game further to also being able to create his own shot and potentially being a little more ball dominant. Yes, that would be great, but I can still see him being a very valuable player for someone his size if he continues to improve on his shooting efficiency, which he has this season, and be a number 2 or number 3 option for the Bulls that they need. I'm not saying he's there yet now, but to give up on him this quickly, in my opinion, is just a little premature. Now, if some team offers him some ridiculous contract that is upwards of $25 million, then no, you have to let him walk, because at that point, I don't think it's worth the risk of matching. Because yes, he could end up breaking out and being a star player, a missing piece the Bulls could really need, but you also don't want to lock yourself into that kind of massive contract for a player that also might not pan out, and you don't want him to become the next Otto Porter and having one of the worst contracts in the league. So in all honesty, this is probably going to be the toughest decision that the new front office is going to need to make so far in their careers with the Bulls. Because initially it was always, what about Zach LaVine? Are we going to be trading him? I mean, that's no longer going to be the case. After having a stellar season like he's been having and becoming an all-star, he will be someone that they keep and that they hold on to. But for Lauri, you essentially have a little less than 4 weeks to try and see if you can find a trade for him and get decent value for him in return. And then you have a tough decision to make on what's the max you're willing to match in any potential offer he may receive if you don't find a trade for him. I want to hear what you guys think though. Are you buy or sell on Lauri? Do you think he fits with the Bulls' long-term plans? Let me know in the comments. Also, the Bulls will be taking on the Raptors later tonight. I'll have a live chat out for that both here on the channel as well as the Discord. Link to that in the description. The Raptors are actually going to be short-handed with a handful of players out under the health and safety protocol, including Pascal Siakam. So hopefully the Bulls can take advantage of that and walk away with a win. As always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in as always, and I will catch you in the next one.